Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the CLSR, and I'm your host, the counselor. Today, we're going to be talking about this repeat offender here. That person could be you if you're a repeat offender. And you know what that means? That means running around with your pants down. You're a person who can't keep their hands in their pockets, a person that cannot keep their hands to themselves. You know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about those repeat offenders, those people that can't stop themselves from cheating. It's what they do. They perfected this method. It's a lifestyle, and you're the victim of it. And you're sitting back there feeling as bad as you could feel, and you wonder why you're in this predicament. It's like you get that feeling again, right? That uneasy feeling. And you know, you had enough problems in the first time, but this time here it feels wrong, definitely wrong. And you just feel in your mind that things aren't going to change, and you start to feel bad inside. You almost feel guilty that you put up with it, and you still have to put up with it. But this is even more damaging because you got a serial cheater on your hands, right? Repeatedly, just repeatedly offending the marriage vows or the relationship vows, right? And see, sometimes you might know about this thing, but you get that feeling, and then you know for sure your feeling, unfortunately, has been validated. You have a real problem. This was not a one knockoff. You did not just skate through like a lot of people wish they could skate through. You have a situation on your hands. And how your life is going to turn out will depend greatly on how you handle this situation. And believe me, some people out there should get some rewards because I'm sure they held it down for years. I know, especially those people who've been together 80 years. I mean, those people you got to give or take hats. Now, that's a little unrealistic, I know, but I'm just saying that there's some people that have been together for years, right? And of course, we know the typicals out there where they're not together for years. And the reason why they're not together is because they got these repeat offenders, those ones that just keep reenacting this behavior. They're out of control, actually. It gives you the impression that they don't know what they want. And you know what? You just have to know what you want. So, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about, like just the feeling that, you just, when you realize it, you just get this sense of it just can't be true, right? It's like it's unreal, right? And you start questioning yourself, like how are you perceiving things, like how much is this you, or what's going on here, right? So then you think that things that happened prior to this state that you're in was just like a lie, it wasn't true, right? You even doubt yourself, your self-worth, and this experience, remember, you're on that end, you're feeling self-critical, you become self-critical. You start to doubt everything, that person has ever said to you before. It's like, where do you go from here? Right? And you just ask yourself that important question, you know, repeatedly. Where did I go wrong? Like, what am I not doing right? And you start to self criticize yourself to the point where you just don't feel like a bad person, you know, right? And you're at a point where something has to be done, a decision has to be made. So we're going to talk about these things today. We're going to go there, right? We're going to put the paper to the pen, to the paper to the pen, right? We're going to cover this thing completely. All right. So just realize that it's already a tragedy when someone's cheating on you one time. So just imagine how you're going to feel if it goes on again and again, right? It's just such a hurtful situation, and it just runs so deep that you start to question everything, right? Like I said, you just can't even believe this is true. This is actually happening to you. And in your brain, your mind just, everything starts to slow, slowly, you take it in. It's just like, wow, it can blow your mind, right? It's just like And you can't, I don't know. It's just like you have a second personality once you come to that realization. You got a second side of you that comes out, the side, the realistic side. And that's where you make the decision if you're going to deal with it or not, right? Or how you're going to deal with it. Now, not everyone can dismiss. I would like to give everyone the impression that we can all just, shut the door and all these things go away. But unfortunately, no, right? It's not that simple. So we've got work to do. But let's first talk about these feelings that we go through, right? Like, of course, we start to feel like it's not real because we don't want it to be real, but it's real. So it's sort of an unrealness to it. And you even, a little snap piece of your mind is saying something's not right. It's not. It doesn't even seem real, You can't believe it, and you wish for the days that aren't in the present, days for the future. You want to look ahead. That's how much your mind gets into it, right? You can't believe it. It's almost unreal. And as you start to question things, anything, like, and you especially question those people that you're dealing with, your partner. Who am I with, right? Am I gonna have some security? Is this what I gotta always deal with? At what limit am I gonna go? Where's my limit with this stuff? And what's really at stake? That's what you got to ask yourself. What's at stake? You know? And you know that everything that you heard up until that point seemed like, and you realize it was a lie. There was no ounce of truth to it. There was no seniority. And the only person that's going to get beat up by this thing is me. Because I start to question me. That person running around, I start to question me, the individual me, right? On, what am I not doing right? What am I doing wrong? Right? And why is somebody else taking my baby from me? Like things like that. They come true, right? These are real feelings. Your sense of self, your self-worth, it starts to deteriorate, right? You do become self-critical. Ask yourself, how could you not have seen this coming? How could this have been going on behind your back? Right? And especially in the circle of friends that I have, no one said anything to me. And, for whatever reason, but I come to find like that is crazy. And that'll blow your mind. There will be nothing else in your life that is of importance at that time. That'll it. That'll be it. That'll dominate it. Right? That'll determine it. But it'll be a very big part of it. You doubt everything that person has ever said to you before. So they just lost you right there. Right? So you got to say to yourself, well, I'm in a conundrum right here. So what am I going to do? What am I going to, what am I going to do? Should I go? Should I stay? Right? And you got to look at everything. You got to look at the consequences of your actions. You got to look at what you're dealing with as far as liabilities and responsibilities. Right? These are decisions. They're very big decisions. And like I said, you have to go through this process, but you have to make some decisions. And there are people, and I don't want to tell you that there's a number of people that, yeah, this happens to everybody. No, it's not true. There are some people who they do it. They put up with it, right? And maybe they, for a number of reasons, right? But that doesn't have to be you. You got to make up your mind. You got to know whatever the consequences are, they're too great if you stay. And that's okay to move your way, right? It's like a payday. You're getting paid to move on. Move on if you have to move on. Get yourself together. Because you know what? Hey, there are a lot of people that are out there talking about relationships and commitment. That's beautiful. That's the way it should be to a certain extent, for sure. You want some security. But we're still human beings, right? We're still animals of a higher being. And there are people out there doing what they got to do. And you know what? There is no one way, but there's a preferred way. And so that's why we're talking about this, is because if you are one of those ones on the run causing all this havoc, then you know you got some unresolved issues. You got some things going on that you either are hiding from, or you don't want to deal with, or you just can't move past. But if you're out there running around, right, you are aware of the whole situation. And if you're in that situation, you have some unresolved issues. You got to get those issues worked out, because too many things are going on out there. So, like I said, these are some of the feelings that the people will go through, right? When you understand this is what you got on your hands. So, if you are the victim or the opposite party in this situation and you have to deal with this, as I said, all these things you will process through your mind. And in the end, you will have to make the decision what you're going to do. Should you stay or should you go? Is this person going to keep on this path? Now, you could try to convince yourself that they won't if they get caught again. And most people do. They forgive. Forgiveness is key, right? It is. However, there's limits to forgiveness, right? You know what I mean? That we always have to keep that into perspective. You can forgive people, but you got to understand if you're forgiving them, you know what I mean? You can forgive them a couple times, but if they're up on that right, wrong, you know what I mean? You ain't gonna keep forgiving them because it doesn't matter. They're showing you it doesn't matter. So keep that in mind. Limits. Set your limits, have your barriers. But make sure you understand and respect each other. But if it's not being respected, you can't keep going through that forever. And some people do. They stay in the relationship and they're mad. They're sad. And you can see it. And they've settled. And is there such thing as a good relationship? Yes, there is, for sure. Right? For sure there is. But if you're in a situation like that, or if you're running, right, you have to remember that there's unresolved issues. And if you're on the other side, you have to make a decision, right? So what are some of the traits that these cheaters have or they share, right? And I think that is like, could be their past behavior. Now, that's one thing that a lot of people don't take into consideration. Think about that. Think about a young lady with a young man, and maybe he's been running around before she got into a mess with him, and then all of a sudden she figures, oh, I'm the one that could settle him down. Depending how wild he was. If he was all over the place, now this is what I'm talking about, the indication of the past behavior. They were all over the place in the past, and then all of a sudden you get into a relationship with them, right? And they settle down because, yeah, they want it. And then a few years go by and maybe they get a little bit bored or what have you, then they start resorting to that behavior, right? Once they get a little bit bored, that past behavior starts to excite them again. So then they start doing it. But see, you being that person, you knew what you were getting into in the first place, right? However, you decided, yeah, you're going to be the hero to save the day, and then this person's going to chill out and never be a bad boy again. Well, unfortunately for you, that's not the case. And here comes reality, right? You got to deal with this bad boy. See, now you got to look that bad boy in the face and see what you're going to deal with, right? It's funny that when we're talking about this, because I had a friend that she was doing some bad things, messing around with some marriage situation, and what had happened is, that thing did not turn out at all because there was a psyche in that person that had the belief that, you know what, this person is going to run away with me. There's so many games that are being played, right? So these are things that you learn, right? So people who are in the relationships, who are in marriages, and they're out there doing those third party calls, right? They're making promises out there, and some people are falling for it. But the thing is you have to look back well before the marriage. Get to know your partner. What were they like before that? Where is this behavior? Because a lot of it is indicated in the past, right? So you have to look at that past behavior and see how they were acting back then, right? Now there were ones that can change, but that's a very strong indicator of what you might have to deal with in the future, right? So that's what is essential if you take a look at that. And these are also people that they don't think, right? When they're going through this, they don't think there's no rules that there's no rules, right? It doesn't apply to them, right? They're sociopathic narcissists, right? They have this view of the world. It's just to them, it's like being in a safari. It's a very competitive game for them, right? And they got to be at the center stage. They got to be at the top of the hill. They got to be on top, right? They have to beat that other person, right? The rules do not apply to these people, and they feel a sense of entitlement. They do. They don't understand the word no, right? But also, there are those ones who, you know, they have their problems with addiction and drugs and alcohol and gambling and being out there, right? And they got these problems with addiction, and they're out there getting all these needs fulfilled, and it's a real problem. So their excuse is, you know what? Hey, they're feeling good about themselves or bad about themselves. Some of them just don't care, right? They have this way, and they're not in the right mind, anyways, if they're under the influence, right? Even people who are gaming and gambling, when it gets to a point where you're out there more than you're paying attention to your situation at home, then, you know, you're in that loose lifestyle, right? And you're also attracting those type of people too in the gaming and gambling industry where you're making money and people who are attracted to money. So you're attracting that attention. See? Even in that, thinking somebody who has an addiction problem with alcohol, they're going to be in that social bar environment or at least out in the streets, you know what I mean? Like moving around, partying, going from party to party, right? And that's a social atmosphere. So that's an opportunity for them to run around. It's not just about that, it's a social opportunities, right? And drugs and being around strangers and people that you don't know. And all of a sudden you're hooking up with strangers and it seems different and it seems better, but they're under the influence. And it's sad. But you're right. And there's those who are running out there, running around, repeat offending because you know what? They don't want to own or take responsibility for their action, right? And they blame the other person, or you're not paying attention to me, or you're not giving me what I want, or every time I try. So what do? They go out there, right? Because they say that, you know what, it's your fault. It's not their responsibility. So they don't take responsibility for their actions, right? Right? So you can't you can listen even if you are at fault and they're not talking to you about it. You can't read minds, right? So if you have something that you might not be doing and they're not communicating it, right, there's no excuse to go running and doing all that. But there are people that do that, right? They feel, listen, that's what I do, right? There are a number of reasons why people are out there running around and doing that serial cheating. There really are. And I'd like to tell you, I could name them all, but I can't. But I can tell you that, believe it or not, there are people out there that are just out there cheating. There's no real reason why they're out there doing it. It's to them, it's something different. Maybe it's a change. You can't really nail it down, but there are some people out there just out there messing around, and I don't know. Some people just would say that they're not thinking about consequences. They're doing what they do, and you know what? It's become a common theme to them that this is going to be the way that they function, right? It's not that they're trying to get out themselves, right? Just some people live that way. They don't have any major reason for being out there. But what about if you have to stay with this person who's a serial cheater, right? There are some things that you're going to have to think about, right? Some things that are going to cross your mind that you have to process. Like, if I'm going to stay with this person, right? How am I going to function, right? Well, you're going to have some obsessive thoughts. That will be in your mind, right? You'll be thinking, what is they doing every part of the day, right? And this thing could play over and over in your mind, right? These obsessive thoughts, right? You might start looking into things because you're going to go through a period of that, right? You're going to be thinking about things, what they could be doing. You know, you could be very insecure at that point, but these are things you have to consider you might go through, right? And then you start thinking about, well, what if I keep looking into things? Will I actually find something, right? You even become paranoid. You're looking for these signs of this person messing around. It's infidelity, right? You might start checking cell phone records, emails, going through their stuff, their purse, right? You know, listening in on conversations behind locked doors, all kinds of stuff. Get paranoid. See, this is what's going to happen to your life if you got to deal with this. That's why a lot of people don't want to deal with it because it's a lot that'll mess with you. See, their mess up is going to mess with you, right? Whatever they did, that's going to mess with you. And it does. Like everything that happens to you impacts you. Now, to what degree is another thing, right? But you're going to have constant anxiety, right? If you can't find that person, if you don't know where they're at, when you figure they should be here, what's the first thing you're going to be thinking? They're out there doing something. This is going to be hard, right? What if you're calling them and they ain't answering? Or what if they never come home late, but all of a sudden they're coming home late, right? You're assuming where they'll be, but you're afraid to kind of check, right? Remember, all parts of you are going to be impacted at some point, right? Aside from this anxiety, right? This is going to maybe interrupt, right? Your whole eating pattern, right? You might not eat right. Your appetite might just deteriorate, or it might increase depending on how you're comforting yourself. It might not be the food is tasty, it's just you are comforting yourself to ease that pain or to deal with that stress. You are just getting busy. Eating all kinds of junk food, right? That feel good stuff, right? That feel good stuff that you're going to put in your body. Even though you really feel nasty inside and terrible, this is going to give you comfort and it's addicting. Just that food, that pattern of eating, right? Could really amp you up. And if you're also one of those people that have difficulty sleeping, right, this thing could really, put you over the edge because it's going to affect some of your sleep, right? Your patterns are going to be like really disturbed, for a while at least, right? You're going to have some difficulty getting to sleep, or you just be up too long, or you'll be getting up in the middle of the night, right? It's just your mind is just going to be wandering, right? And these thoughts will be hard to control and to turn off when your mind's going through it, right? It's almost like a mental torture. But you got to get some rest. You got to relax yourself. And you got to be able to get into some sleep. But it's going to be a challenge. And of course, it's going to affect you on your job. Could you imagine when you go to work and then this is something that is in the forefront of your mind? You're not going to really be able to concentrate. This thing is going to take over, right? It's going to be working your every nerve. You might be thinking about breaks that you should be getting in, what you should be doing, running an hour back, an hour drive back home in a 15-minute corridor because you're all hyped up and insecure. So you want to take that 15-minute break and take an hour and a half to 2 weeks and get back and you're late because you're insecure. You want to catch them. You want to see what's going on when they're at home. Who knows? But these are feelings that you're going to go through, right? You won't be able to concentrate. And you don't really want to tell people at your work what you're going through, right? You don't want to tell them what you're going through. It's too much, right? You want to be able to live that moment down. Okay, so you also are going to, I know that you're going to feel a little bit of embarrassment, right? Especially, you're going to feel some torment and embarrassment, a little bit of shame too, because if if it gets around to your friends, which it does, and some are nice about it, but it's heart wrenching, man. It's heart wrenching. Oh my God. Like, even when I'm hearing my friends say things like what happened to them, I'm like, oh my goodness, my man, You were smiling. There's a smile on your face. How do you do it? Right? Because it's tough. You know what I mean? And if your friends even talking to you about it, and or some people won't even tell you what's going on, but even after it happens, if they're talking about it, you feel like, whoa, you know? And then after that embarrassment and that shame, you're gonna like really get heated. You're gonna get angry. And there's gonna be some, rage inside that's gonna build up. And you're gonna want to unleash that rage. Right? And this is why I said it's a real challenge at this stage, right? Because this is what it's almost like an emotional roller coaster that you're going through. You have a pervasive sense of loss, of stability, and you don't know if you could trust them again. Or maybe trust is all gone. There's not even a chance, right? So these are things that will put you in a state of funk. And it only leaves you with decisions that got to be made, right? And I told you, if you are making a decision, I strongly recommend that you get some counseling before you make that decision. Possibly couples counseling, right? Because you need to, make sure that your needs are being taken care of, especially if you're with this person. You can't be on the edge. You can't have your mind wandering throughout the day. This is why people drive through traffic lights and that, because of that stress that gets to their mind. If you see it's coming and it's a problem, get some help if you can, but don't let it burn you, because, trying to handle it on your own is going to be an issue. I strongly recommend a marriage counselor. And if that person's unwilling to do it, then you know where you're really at, right? Because you can't be the only one wanting to work on the situation to make it better. So you got to get some professional help. It's required. Some professional support, right? Just to figure out what are you going to do, if any, if you have to stay in that relationship. How are you going to have a life? And help them help you by being open and clear and honest, right? And say that to your partner too, right? And you're going to ask yourself, should you go? And you're going to feel it in your gut, right? And you're going to know that there's a price that you're going to pay. But the reality is you have to figure out if that price is greater or worse if you stay. Is it going to be even worse for me if I stay? You know what I mean? Or is it going to be greater for me, this price or if I stay? Or is it going to be the situation where you realize that you don't really have a choice. You got to move on. It's just not something you might know that right away. There are some that don't. But just think about it. If you had to stay in that situation, you would want to know that, how bad is it? Am I going to really be able to handle it? And some people just stay and then they figure out, like, in the end, like, you know what? I tried to make it work, whatever, and it just didn't work. And that's the way people do it. So there's no real one way to deal, but I think if you get it in your gut and you make the decision, you do, right? But if you stay, you got to outweigh what the consequences are, right? What are the benefits and the consequences? Is there really going to be a life for you there, right? And you'll get that feeling and you'll make that decision. But the best thing I always recommend is get some professional help when you have to make that decision, or before you make it, or during the time you're making it, right? Don't just try and make it on emotion. You try to make sure that you're aware that this is a situation, and it isn't easy. It's not black and white. It's actually, there's a lot of context that we have to be mindful of. We have to put it into context because it's different for different people, right? It is how people, but I'm saying for the most part, There's ways that you could try to work through it and handle it. It's not just a one-sided story, but I really recommend the professional help. It's essential. So let's talk a little bit about what are some of the signs of some of these cheaters, because we have to get back to that to know, if it's legit or not, right? I mean, there are a couple things that you could be looking for, right? And you do. You could sometimes you gotta open up your mind anyway. Don't be all paranoid and that, but if you get the feeling, there's things that you can you know, check off to make sure that hey, that's okay. You know what I mean? But what are some of the things? What are some of these signs that are out there? Well, I know one thing is someone who's out there, right? And they got like a schedule that they usually follow, right? And occasionally it changes. But then all of a sudden, there's a rapid change in that schedule, right? So having changes in their schedule of, acting like it's too much work that they're doing, right? Oh, gotta stay over hours because see, they always slip up. They say they stay to a certain time, but they always end up going on. Gives you all kinds of opportunity, but you gotta think a change in the schedule is something you gotta look for her and him, right? Things change if they're constantly on routine and all of a sudden it changes, right? For a period of time at least, and look into that, like, right? There are subtleties that you must be aware of. Like if they're paying attention to maybe their wardrobe, if you see them just changing all of a sudden, their look, and you just can't figure out why all of a sudden they're really worried about their appearance, or if they've upped their appearance to look more attractive, or you know seem more appealing. It might not just be for you. Just watch. Could be there. And if they're holding like one of their gadgets or cell phones, and you see that they're trying to protect, you from seeing into that device, or trying to be a little secretive by holding back, that's something that you also need to look into too, right? They're being too secretive, or what about changes in your sexual life and your partner's sex attitude? When your partner suddenly has moves in bed, for example, right? They change that routine like big time. You might wonder, where's this going? Where's this person been all my life? Or you could say, where did you get these moves? You know what I mean? Or where did he get these moves? This is something totally new. Oh no, you get spanked when you never been spanked before. You don't want that. You got to check into that. You got to investigate, right? You got to make sure something's up. You got to make sure you're paying attention. But hey, it happens, right? That's a big indicator. And what about finances, right? Money coming from somewhere you didn't either contribute to, or you're seeing how could they afford this, and why do they have this going on financially, coming up with new clothes. Like women cannot come up with clothes all the time, so that's a little bit challenging to get through that one, right? Because they're always coming up with something. Maybe I should be looking into it, but the point is that you got to be careful with that, right? They can buy their own things for sure because they're always buying things. But then, if you see them with stuff that that you don't normally see, then that financial indication, right? Because everybody's doing a little bit of work here and there, right, to figure out the situation, right? And what about if you're not getting the attention? He or she, this person's avoiding an emotional intimacy. If they're, you know, people do act different, right? Especially when they shy away from the person, and that person is trying to explain something, and the other person's pulling away, or they don't seem attached, or they seem a little different or emotionally distant, right? These are signs that could be something's going on. I mean, have you ever just said, hey, listen, what if there's something going on, let me know. That is a powerful one that a lot of us wouldn't use. But if you use it, you might be surprised what you get on the end of that, right? So sometimes you have to be blunt, but there are people in relationships, right, That emotional disconnect, it's somewhere else, right? That they're connecting somewhere else. There's something going on, right? There's something else at play there. They could be unhappy or unsatisfied with the relationship, you know, and they could be showing just in that way, right? But it could be opposite of that too, right? Someone who's trying to be, you know, too close, too attached. It's like it's a little bit out of the norm. They're seeming like they're clinging on to you a little bit more than they used to, or they're following you, or you know what I mean? Like they're just it's just an odd feeling. That they're getting, they need this connection and privacy more than they've ever needed it before. Right? So look at that. That might be something that might actually surprise you, right? That this person all of a sudden is needing all this attention. It's showing that they need attention. It could be a sign, but at least talk about it, right? Right? And what about that scent, that smell, that makeup, that hairdo, that manicure or manicure and pedicure? It's different. The perfume smells different. Different. It's an indicator. It's a little unusual scent that just sparks your arousal just enough to make you wonder. Right? Get you thinking, anyways. But just watch that, right? Baby got, because hey, that stuff costs a lot of money too, right? Put that whole package together. If you're not funding it, you'll know. They're funding it, great, but if they ain't funding all of it, you'll know, right? But what about, one of the things that agitates me is passwords. If you're in a relationship, do you really think you should have passwords? Right? People setting up passwords in their own relationship. But there's a lot of you out there that are, you're in relationships, you're fine, and you do the password thing. But I don't know if that's because you get into the relationship using passwords, or you're getting it because you're in the relationship and you want to have your own privacy. There's a number of reasons why people set up passwords. But, if they suddenly set up passwords where if they've never had it before, then it's time to start thinking about it. Right? Just all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they got passwords set up. You have nothing to hide. All of a sudden, after this handful of years, this person is using passwords. That's an indication, big indication something's going on, right? They got to lock their phone. And they're only locking it from you, right? But one of the biggest giveaways by far is mood swings, irritableness. That right there is That's a giveaway. But we often don't pay attention to it. They get you into such a funk that you're just responding to it. You ain't got time to think about what they're actually doing because they're going through it. And it's you if you process it, then you go, you know what, they're going through that mood swing. They either need some attention, but then they're acting like they don't. But they're just so irritable. And then you go, so you don't end up focusing on what they're actually doing, right? Playing a game, right? Attention seeking, but they got a purpose. So remember that. So if they're going through that major mood swings and irritableness, right? Having more conflicts with you than you ever thought could happen, just fussing over nothing. Matter of fact, they start telling you what to do like never before. Right? And you can't even explain it. Like, who is this person talking to me this way? This does not like you, dear. Right? But it becomes a part of the personality. So I would say that is a very good indicator that something could be going wrong. It's just worth taking a look at, right? And what about those ones that are locking the door behind themselves or taking those hour walks with the cell phone, right? Spending more time on that phone or going to bed early to get on the phone. or in the backyard with the door locked, watching you as you walk through the back. Just hang it up as you get that door unlocked. They're sneaky. Spending more time on that phone with guess who? You know who. They're dedicating all their time to this person. He, and then ha, and then, all the while laughing at you and caring not about you. You didn't even know it. But this is the kicker. You're in a relationship so long that you're just like, oh, you know what? I don't really want to ask them who that could be because that might make me look a little, you know, childish or jealous, or, it might make me look like a fool if I ask them, because I've been shot down before, right? Some of you are like that, you know, but if you get called out, see, we have to learn to be comfortable with the uncomfortable sometimes. People, that's where so many of you struggle. You think that if you have a little bit of confrontation, you just don't like it, it's out of control. Listen, if you can embrace it and be uncomfortable or comfortable with the uncomfortable sometimes, just sometimes, right? Then you can understand, you know what I mean? That, hey, you got to ask, hey, who's that, baby? Right? Ask that question. Get it over with. But too many of you become passive aggressive and you're just, you're um prying, right? You're asking in roundabout ways, and or you're manipulating to get them to talk. Like there's so many things. Instead of just saying, now they could lie to you, but just get it off your chest, and and then talk about it. But them dedicating too much time on the phone, unless it's a family member or a mother, but just sometimes these are signs. Not everyone's doing all of these things, but these are things that could wake you up, right? When you see that they're spending so much time on that telephone, find their ways to get away, places to go, places, where'd you go? Went around the block. You were gone for 2 hours. See, there's a problem, especially if she ain't got no pets. You know what I mean? That too, those long walks in the park in the dark. That's a dead giveaway. When they want to go for a long walk by themselves, I'm okay at night, and they go out, they say they're going to be gone for 15 minutes. Next thing you know, they come back an hour and a half later, acting like they got lost. You got some problems if you got that one on your hands, right? You know what I mean? Because it's true. And you know what happens? Because you would think that, oh man, that's crazy. Somebody be gone for an hour and a half. But you know what? When somebody, and if you know yourself, if you get on the cell phone and you're walking around, right? You listen to that cell phone, you know what I mean? You're walking, you could walk to a different country. That's how long you're walking. But you know what? You lost track of time. But it felt good. You had a great walk, right? But watch them, because their walk might not be the same as your walk, but it'll take just as long. Because we do know about those long walks. So you don't go crazy, right? And you got to ask yourself, what do you do? But just be mindful of this, right? I can't tell you how. No, not trying to drive people crazy. I'm just saying these are some of the signs. I don't want you running out there jumping in your car every time a person goes jogging around the block or walking around the block. No, but if you get a couple of these things adding up, hey, right? Hey, you're gonna have to look into it, right? Just watch for things that are out of the ordinary. It's always good to do that, right? Like I've always been a little curious when somebody's over appreciating me, you know, showing me too much affection, unexplained appreciation. You know what I mean? It's like, you know what? I'm almost feeling I'm in a state of guilt or something. They're just treating me so good. See, these are the things that you got to look for, right? Just affection that you could unexplain, right? You're getting this unexplained affection. Like, you ain't got, no, something's up. Something's up, right? This person's got a desire, right? You know, they're trying to make up for something. I don't know what it is, but I got the feeling. This is all, if we pay attention to our sixth sense, people, it can tell you a lot of things. Some of you don't want to know. I get it. Most of you do. But these are just signs that help you, right? No, 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 no. And watch out for the hummingbird, right? You right? Watch out. Watch out for the sneaky Pete. the ones that make sure that when there are pictures in and around your own spot, they're not of you. I said that they're not of you. They're not of you and them. It's just them, right? Right? Think about that. Just them. But it doesn't, or it's not just them, but it eliminates you apart from them. And the photos are all over the place, but you don't see yourself in it anymore. That's an indication, right? That's a big indication, right? That those, you start to ask yourself, is that person messing around? Right? Is that person on social media? Right? Who are they tagging? What about them photos? You even see some of them photos that you see them messing with, and you don't see yourself in them at all. All you see them is doing all that posing. You know what I mean? You don't even exist in them photos anymore. It's almost like they can see. This is a sneaky part. That's social media. This is where a lot of people take it for granted. You got to look at what people are posting. See who they're posting with. If they're all by themselves, are they trying to advertise for extra attention? Could be, because that's what the media is about anyway. Social media in itself is a tool that people can use in the wrong way, right? Some of them might not ever do shit with it, but the point is that they're going to use it. And then some of them are going to look for some of that attention. But be aware of that, right? If you're not in those pictures and you see her in those pictures all the time, then you got to go, I wonder why. Maybe she's giving someone the impression she's single. Wow. Well, that could be an indication right there. And one of the ones that could drop you to your knees, that will have you dry your eye, that'll make you sweat, your socks wet, right? It'll make your face flush, right? And that's that gut feeling. It's when you feel it in your gut. And that's that feeling that person is doing something on you. There's a gut feeling. And that's our human side talking to us. It's that gut feeling. These signs are adding up. And it's not a gut feeling just out of nowhere, right? See, you pay attention to a couple of these mentioned signs that I told you, the ones that I mentioned previously, and that's going to tell you something. That's going to tell you if you come, right? If a couple of those register, it's going to add up in your head. See, that's the math that you took. The math on life. That's why math is out there, to put it together, right? So it's going to add up in your head if a couple of those, that's what the brain's designed to do, right? It's complex. But once it sees a couple of those signs and they put it together, then you get that feeling in your gut. And you go, wow. And you got to rely on that gut feeling. It is your intuition. It's very useful. You have to trust it. And you got to figure out, how are you going to get to the crux of this situation? How are you going to get to the truth? But you got this feeling in your gut. And you ain't going to go nowhere with this gut, because this gut is going to twist you. It's going to turn you. You ain't going to be able to stand up straight. It's going to get control of your body. And until you work it out and figure it out, this gut feeling is going to stay with you. And that gut feeling in itself has driven people crazy. So you got to figure it out. But once you get that feeling in your gut, you got to do some work. You got to investigate. You got to take care of things. Because usually that gut feeling, not all the time, but man, you'd be surprised how that gut feeling, when it comes to light, it just could be so bang on. And it's almost like a crash course. You just break on through and that gut hits you and you're just like, whoa. It could be moving, right? It definitely could be moving. It could disturb you, right? It could put you out of commission. But it is one of the strongest feelings that you get. And to some people, it reaches the back of their spine, tickles their mind, and they can't find their way out of that forest because it's deep. But see, that's what we are. We're human beings, and we got those feelings, and they can be so strong. So that's why I say what you need is you need to know that when you go through these situations, it's very, very serious. And you need to get support if you need support, professional help, professional assistance. Don't try to deal with it and handle it on your own. A lot of people do, and they go inside and out. And some people destroy themselves and possibly go to destroy other people because of this rage that's inside of them. These feelings, these unresolved issues, right? It's just something that becomes a part of you. And you got to say, what do you do about this? How am I going to work with this? Right? What do you do? What should you do? Is there something for you to do? The fact it's here. It's not a one-time thing. There's no mistakes. You know it's real. It's a part of your life now. You got to make decisions. Everything that you thought you know, you didn't know. You know now, but things that you thought you know about that person, you realize it was all a lie. But you got to understand that there are many reasons for people to cheat. But however, when it comes to serial cheating, we must understand that these people really have something going on up there, right? They're addicted. Their mind has two things going on at this time, right? They have the endorphins that's in their mind. That's how the endorphins for falling in love. But at the same time, there's an adrenaline, for these people feeling they have the potential to get caught. So their mind's going through this transition. That's what serial cheaters do, right? This is the processes that they go through. I'm trying to understand why one person is cheating, but try to understand serial cheaters, it's a little bit more complex. And for these people, it's impossible for them to make a change or next to impossible, right? They're just caught up. And you are the only one that has to make that decision. Number one, are you going to get some professional help? Are you willing to keep on going through this? Is this something that's going to be a part of your life? And where does this train stop? Because really, when I talk about professional help, seeking some, that is something I truly mean. It's something that has to be considered, getting some professional assistance with this if you're trying to work it out and save it. And there are just some people that have gone to the end of their line and they feel, you know what, it's either the timing in their life, the age they're at, the commitment, the loss of trust, the trust that they feel they'll never get back, or just they're tired. There's so many reasons for people to walk away from that situation, from somebody who's hurting them, or not seeing things their way, or try to deal with their own needs. There's so many things that person's dealing with that you have to make the decision. Do you want to keep dealing with this? Is this going to be who you have to deal with the whole life? Right? But how are you dealing with it? You know there's a disconnect, right? You know there's something going on, and you can't just deal with it on your own. Don't try to get too involved with the family members, hoping that they could uh, relieve that. No, if they couldn't do anything in the past, they ain't gonna do. You really need some professional guidance and support, and you might have to understand that it is the two of you, not just you. There's been a disconnect, and you have to reconnect if you're gonna try to make it work. And make sure that they're working just as hard, if not harder, to keep it together if they want this thing to work. But if you got to come clean, you got to come clean. And that, as I said, will be a challenge for many of you, because you will have skeletons, or you will have some secrets to tell, and you got to let go of some of that, because sometimes it's those skeletons in the closet that that person might be aware of, and you think you got something, and until maybe you get it off the shelf or come clean, that person might never trust you, but you think you got something and you don't. So when it comes to this, everybody's got to come clean. You got to embrace change and be honest with your partner, right? You got to be open. You got to live it. You got to accept that this is a reality. You got to come to grips with it, come to terms with it, have some peace so that you can have a peace of mind, right? Do some new commitment if you have to. Understand the guilt and the shame that's a part of the process, right? You have to figure out, right? You have to give them the truth. You got to stop cutting corners. Stop lying. Stop the betrayal. It's never, very rarely, ever a one sided story to some couples gone wrong. However, it's not really just that. It's what they see as who's to blame, right? So if I feel that I'm being wronged, then I'm always going to be on the defensive. And if there's a blame game involved, we're always going to protect ourselves, right? We're always going to defend ourselves. That's what we do. It's us. However, if you're looking for some change, you got to meet halfway. And even if you're on the receiving end of this person doing these despicable acts, you have to take some accountability and accept and meet halfway anyways, right? And understand your limits, because you are sitting there. You are trying to make it. So if you're there, you don't want to waste your time. So you want to be as straightforward as you can be. And you have to understand it's okay to be angry. See, matter of fact, those are good venues to express your emotions and your feelings and your disgust. They could even be a safe place for you to feel that you can express. So that's why I say, if you're in a situation, go for it professionally. Right? Get in that environment where you can discuss. Deal with it. And you can go on your own, but when it comes to their commitment and their responsibility relationship, you have to make sure that that partner is buying into this thing and they're actually being real, not just on the, I'm going to correct my bad behavior. I want to see some real commitment, and I want to see some real input and some real effort put forth to meet me where I have to be to make this right, if I'm going to make it right. And I do say that with the if, because rarely is it a one off situation where it's just easy. But it's a lot of people do. You believe it more than you care to believe. There are a number of people that just they don't want to put up with that foolishness. Or they put up with it and they might not have to go through it because they're not planning to go through it anymore. They've seen enough, and some of them might even be in a position where they feel that the person that out there running around, they stopped caring a long time ago. They might have knew it a long time ago, but when they're up and ready to make a move, they're gone. Right? We all think that it's old everything. Sometimes people just lose interest. Sometimes people just go their separate ways, even though they're living in the same spot. And that person, see, that's the part we don't really talk about. We don't talk about the fact that that person could have been giving you everything you wanted, and even attention wise. But if you lose it for them, right? See, this is how unrealistic people can be too, like, because they don't want to look at themselves. We're very selfish human beings in the sense that, see, if we're doing things to drive that person away, or not even caring about them, or not even showing them any sort of attention, if we're being that obvious, right? Because this is how we could get. This is a side of us that we don't like to acknowledge. Is we could be a certain way where we're like, yeah, whatever. You know what? I don't have to. I don't have to extend that. It is what it is. I'm in this situation. Whatever. But you're not giving them their attention or their due date, where they get that attention, right? Or they're feeling that they're not connecting. There is a disconnect. But you're just at that I don't care phase anymore. The real problem is that when it happens, where that person is running around doing this, that, and the other, you get all upset when you know doggone well you played a very big part in that role and what happened and what been going on. So your lack of care. However, for our egos or whatever, when we know this, instead of trying to work it out, we're too prideful. And you've seen those people who are too prideful, right? They think it's being strong, but it's weak because they're causing the issue and they know. See, a lot of times we try to pretend, oh, well, we don't know what it is. We need all this to figure it out. No, a lot of times we know our behavior and we could have been mad about something and we're just mistreating somebody or taking advantage or we just stop caring. But we see all these things being played out and we gave up. Some people just like, who cares? That's it. Not even interested. But there are people out there, you know what I mean, that just act like they don't care when they really care, when they know they were involved in part of this. They took partake in this. And a lot of people are selfish. Well, that has nothing to do with me. I can't be responsible if they're running around, if they're serial. No, I'm not saying you're to be responsible, but I'm saying acknowledge your part. If you're not, you know what I mean? Because sometimes this is the thing, and we have to keep this into account. We have to. See, a lot of people that have partners that mess around on them, they don't forgive easily. Sometimes, if anything, they might chill out, kind of put it on the back. They never forget. But if it eats away at them inside, they can see. This is why I said those are some of the consequences if you stay in a relationship as it happens. They're messing around. You know they're messing around, and they're there. Hey, it could be game on from there, right? You could be angry. You could be very frustrated. And you could be like, why should I let you go, right? My ego's like, yeah, you're cheating. Well, why should I let you go? No, I'm going to make you stand. This and that. You're going to deal with this and this, that, right? And then we still haven't forgave them. And then see, we end up living that life with them where they know. They don't messed up. You never see them the same. And that's the game. And once you know that, that's what I'm talking about. We don't always forgive in the time that people want us to forgive or move on. And some of us might never move on. And they'll play little games every once in a while to show how they have not moved on. And you got to ask yourself, are you one of those people? Well, if you are one of those people, you have to check yourself. Well, I got to say to all my listeners, I really appreciate you listening to because we do have repeat offenders out there. And remember, you have some personal power and you have to exercise it and always respect yourself, right? We haven't talked about safe ways of dealing with a repeat offender because I think that's something we need to talk about as well. When we're dealing with somebody who's a repeat offender and, you know, it's not so easy as people would say to address that issue. For some people, it could be scary, downright scary, right? Because they know that person, if they're addressed, because you might even think it's a psychosis that they got going on, but you know what? That could build up in you where you're so anxious you don't want to really address it, for the reaction or their denial, or you just don't want to go through it. So it could be nerve-wracking for an individual to have to address that person for the second time, right? That is something as well that could be really heart-wrenching if you have to do that. So keep that in mind that it's not easy to approach someone, especially when they've done, again, the reoffending. And you have to do it. And you might need somebody with you if you have to do it. Because some of them might get into a funk and some might go way overboard. See, this might be the jump off point for that person. Because they're like, what? I lied to you. I got away with it for so long. I thought you didn't know. And now here you got me and you proved it without a shadow of a doubt that I'm a bad person. And you know what? They lose it. Those are things you have to think about, and I don't think enough of you think about that. Most of you do because that's part of that fear and anxiety of approaching somebody, right? When you got to accuse them of, hey, you've been messing around, I already forgave you, all that stuff, you lie, can't you? Oh man, you go through it. And that's why I said you have to be comfortable sometimes with being uncomfortable. Sometimes we have to, right? And you know what? I want to talk about my next podcast is going to be the lovey-dovey who take you back. The lovey-dovey are why these people take back these people who are repeat offenders. Why are you taking them back? And that is just as interesting as why they do it. Why do I keep taking? What is it about me that keeps taking this person back? You know what I mean? Why can't I let go? What is it? I love this person. Well, anyways, listen to me. We had a great talk today. Be like the wise old bird and spread the word. The counselor is out. Until we speak again, we're going to be talking about why. Why do you keep taking him back when he keeps running around on you or her? Right? What is it about you inside? Huh? What can we put a finger on it? Well, until next time, people, I want you to take care and think for yourselves. Take care.